How is it going there, YouTube? Bit of a shakeup. As I began uploading Hush Dreams to YouTube, I noticed all the flaws within the story. And while my fire to return to the story returned, I wanted to fix all those faults. So I began to write the story. And this is that story, Silent Dreams. So sit back, listen, and I hope you enjoy. If you like it, don't forget to leave a comment and give it a like. And if this is the content you are here for, subscribe for more. On to the story. It was so miserably cold. Every puff of breath spread a fine mist that, as soon as it left his lips, froze his lips and cheeks. He had experienced colder, but at this moment, and from how he felt, this was the worst. The cold seeped into his wounds, chilling him from within. The blood had long since dried, frozen by the cold. Each step was a war. His calves burned. His hamstrings screamed at him to stop, but he had to push forward and run despite his body's protest. What was worse was that he had exerted almost everything he had before. He could barely stand, limping against frost-bitten trees to remain on his feet. He had fought tooth and nail to bring Sasuke back, and through half-lidded eyes he peered behind him and grimaced. Everything was blurry, but those damn creatures were still on his tail. He could barely stand, let alone fight these stupid fairy tale wolves. If he wasn't banged up, his chakra drained and exhausted from using the Nine-Tails power, he would show him. All he could do was run. He didn't have time to think where he was and what had happened. He had to keep in front of them at all costs. It was more difficult than he had hoped. They were quick. He could have easily evaded them in a better condition, but would he have needed to? Bastard! Naruto stumbled under a claw swipe, catching him on his calf. Naruto responded with a flick of a kunai and a jab into the ribs. It howled in pain as Naruto kicked it back, ripped the kunai out, and rolled past another leaping in, a fine black mist escaping from the wound. It was squishy like flesh, but there was no blood. He would mull over that when he had the time. He had to keep moving despite the burning protest of his muscles and the newest wound of his calf. Naruto needed to keep moving forward, keep ahead and force them to engage so he could strike with a devastating counter. He could feel the scorching heat of Nine-Tails chakra mending his wounds. Slower than what he was used to, but the longer he gave it, the better his odds. Didn't want to press it too much. The last burst of chakra the fox gave him was challenging to withstand. He felt as if he was melting. Shit! Naruto's eyes narrowed as the growls around him intensified. The things were smarter than he gave them credit for. They had used their speed to get ahead of him, surround him. They at least had a modicum of intelligence. He didn't have a choice now. He was going to have to press his chances. Get out of my way, Naruto snapped, slipping past a claw swipe and cutting through the jugular with a kunai. The black mist gushed, but the creature fell. They may not bleed, but they were killable nonetheless. Still, Naruto's mobility was limited, and theirs was not. One quickly was on him from behind, but he was ready. A quick flip of the kunai, he drove behind him and square into the skull of the Grim that leapt behind him. It went limp, but didn't lose its momentum. Naruto grimaced as the Grim tumbled and knocked him over, its corpse pressing on top of him. Air escaped his lungs and he grunted, using the last vestiges of strength to toss the Grim's body off him, directly into another, tripping it. Again, he would note for later that the corpse was disintegrated. Couldn't focus on that right now. Fueled by adrenaline and a small burst of the Nine-Tails chakra, Naruto managed to temporarily ignore his injuries and scamper from the spot, avoiding two Grim that lunged and slammed into one another. Watch where you're going, mutts, Naruto quipped, the moment's amusement not lost on him despite being outnumbered. There could have been 100 more of them, and he would have still laughed at that. These things were jokes. This left a bitter taste in his mouth at his current predicament. He could have taken these things any other time, but now, his luck turned sour on him today. First Sasuke, now this. What next? A cabin? Naruto bit his lip, noticing a structure in the distance. He had to take the chance. If someone were in this frozen nightmare, they had to be strong enough to help him deal with these creatures. Let him get a breather. At least he hoped. Nothing made sense right now. Oi, get off me! Naruto roared, a Grim lunging from behind, catching him, his claws sinking into his shoulders. His fangs penetrated the flesh around his collarbone. Naruto drove his head back and winced, feeling the contact, but grinned as it released him. It may have had a hard head, but Naruto's was harder. He stumbled to regain his previous burst of speed, but it wasn't enough. He wasn't going to make the cabin at this rate. A fight seemed inevitable. Naruto scrunched his brow. What was that noise? Even as the wind rushed past and the growls of the demon wolves became louder, he heard something which twisted and turned his gut into a knot. A child's scream. Naruto's gaze shifted ahead toward the cabin. Now that he was closer, he could see what looked like a child's wagon. A primal anxiety overcame Naruto. Despite being a kid, the sounds of someone younger crying for help caused a chill shudder. Naruto gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. A grim resolve fueled him, seeing more creatures gathered around the wagon, about to strike. I don't care if it leaves me broken, leaves me in a puddle of flesh. Give me something, Fox! Naruto growled as he opened his palm, concentrating what little remained of his chakra into a swirl. And for a brief moment, the world froze around him. Naruto was drawn into darkness, standing ankle-deep in water before a familiar cage. Two crimson eyes snapped open, its teeth visibly snarling, but its voice chuckled as its malicious and oppressive chakra seeped from the cage, wrapping around Naruto. Amusing. Let's see what it takes to break you. Heh, Naruto cockily smirked, staring back at the fox as the demon's chakra scalded him. Throw whatever you can at me, I can take it. Just give me the strength to save them, Naruto roared as he leapt forward. A crimson chakra cloak resonated around him, and a violet orb of chakra revolved in his palm. Rasengan! Naruto threw his arm ahead, driving the violent orb into one grim, obliterating it instantly, and into a second, a third, fourth, and even a fifth before it ruptured, taking several more from the explosion. Unfazed and absorbing the recoil, Naruto flipped back and landed before the two children. His teeth gnarled as he focused on the remaining demon wolves. And despite his feral visage and the intense chakra melting the snow beneath his feet, Naruto turned back to the children, forcing a smile. You're safe now. As for you, monsters... Naruto focused his attention on the wolf grim gathered, hesitant to strike. A chakra tail swayed in agitation behind Naruto, his crimson eyes seething, before he lunged. Get the hell away from them! No, no, no. Where were they? Damn it, Tai, Crow quietly snarled, a rage building within. He knew his friend was suffering from traumatic depression. He understood how depression could change a person. But he still had children to take care of. Who needed him? If he couldn't handle them, he should have at least. Where did you run off to, Yang? Why did you take Ruby with you? Crow's beak clacked, desperately following the trail of footprints and wheels left in the snow. She had to be looking for her mother and took Ruby with her. He wanted to be upset with her for doing something so silly, but after seeing how Tai looked, Crow understood. If she only knew that living with her mother would be worse for her. His sharpened eyes focused on a cabin ahead before he shivered at the sight. The yard of the cabin was littered with the disintegrating corpses of Grimm, and at the front door, a seemingly lifeless child, barely old enough to attend signal, lay in the entrance. But despite his appearance, he was still awake and breathing, guarding what lay inside. Ruby and Yang huddled behind their wagon, tears streaming down their terrified faces. Crow didn't care that he morphed before them into a full sprint, coming to a slide and stopping before the horrifically injured kid. Uncle Crow! Ruby and Yang screamed instantaneously, rushing toward him and embracing him. Crow comforted the terror-stricken children, and as grateful as he was to see them okay, he focused on the kid who was the obvious hero here. He saved his nieces from a grisly fate, but was left on death's door for it. Or was he? His wounds were healing fast. And that chest wound, the kid was barely able to lift his head, but he could see a sense of relief wash over him before the kid laughed, saying something indecipherable, and slumped over, having held out for however long they had been here. Crow shifted Ruby and Yang into one arm and hefted the kid onto his shoulder with his other. He knew it wasn't the best way to transport him, but this place wasn't safe, and he could get him help once Ruby and Yang were safe. No, no, no. Where were they? Damn it, Tai, Crow quietly snarled, a rage building within. He knew his friend was suffering from traumatic depression. He understood how depression could change a person. But he still had children to take care of. Who needed him? If he couldn't handle them, he should have at least. "Where did you run off to, Yang? Why did you take Ruby with you?" Crow's beak clacked, desperately following the trail of footprints and wheels left in the snow. She had to be looking for her mother and took Ruby with her. He wanted to be upset with her for doing something so silly, but after seeing how Ty looked, Crow understood. If she only knew that living with her mother would be worse for her. His sharpened eyes focused on a cabin ahead before he shivered at the sight. The yard of the cabin was littered with the disintegrating corpses of Grimm, and at the front door, a seemingly lifeless child, barely old enough to attend signal, lay in the entrance. But despite his appearance, he was still awake and breathing, guarding what lay inside. Ruby and Yang huddled behind their wagon, tears streaming down their terrified faces. Crow didn't care that he morphed before them into a full sprint, coming to a slide and stopping before the horrifically injured kid. "Uncle Crow!" Ruby and Yang screamed instantaneously, rushing toward him and embracing him. Crow comforted the terror-stricken children, and as grateful as he was to see them okay, he focused on the kid who was the obvious hero here. He saved his nieces from a grisly fate, but was left on death's door for it. Or was he? His wounds were healing fast. And that chest wound, the kid was barely able to lift his head, but he could see a sense of relief wash over him before the kid laughed, saying something indecipherable, and slumped over, having held out for however long they had been here. Crow shifted Ruby and Yang into one arm and hefted the kid onto his shoulder with his other. He knew it wasn't the best way to transport him, but this place wasn't safe, and he could get him help once Ruby and Yang were safe. Another day, another visit to the hospital, another day where she had to live with the fact that she was different. Another day that Pop and Mama were disappointed in her, for all her faults. She was too short, far shorter than someone her age should be. It was suspected that she had some sort of hormone or chemical imbalance that was stunting her growth. It was also suspected that when she hit her growth spurt, she would still be below the average height of someone currently her age. There was no miracle cure. She just was always going to be petite, and that growth defect may have also caused another fault in her, her inability to speak, utter a single noise. The doctors had long since reasoned that her vocal cords never formed as they should have when she was in the womb. There was a stimulation treatment when she was young, but it didn't seem to work. She did not have a voice, something that Mama and Papa desperately craved. Trivia Vanilla grimaced, squinting awkwardly as her right eye itched. She despised wearing a single contact to conform. She liked her eyes. They were unique. Why couldn't she show everyone her heterochromia? Mama said her eyes made her stand out. Why did Papa want to disguise them? It didn't make sense. Feeling the car pull up through the gate, Trivia sighed, glancing down at her scroll and the new app on it, a text-to-speech app. Papa hated it. He hated all the tools she was given to communicate, and it wasn't what he desired. He desired to hear her speak. Didn't he know that was all she wanted? She dreamed of singing great songs that everyone would love, but it was a dream she would never achieve. She would never be able to sing for anyone, even for a white knight to rescue her from this monotonous hell, free her from the chains and take her beyond these walls. Trivia released a breathy sigh, the only noise she could make. She took one last look toward the outside world through the dark tinted windows of the car as it came to a stop. How she longed to be free, to have a choice and go where she wanted. All she wanted was to head to the park, play, have fun, get some ice cream from a parlor. Somewhere, anywhere other than the clothing stores her mother took her to, or the rare cases they went out for a family dinner. Was that so hard to ask for? The car door opened and Trivia glowered at the butler as she stepped out, rustling past him in the trash bins. She didn't want to go back inside. She wanted to do something fun, anything besides being trapped here. A thunderous metallic thud shook her. Trivia's eyes flickered, jumping several feet from the noise before her voice rasped at the sight. Her friend stood atop the bins, gesturing for Trivia to join as she kicked a can down the driveway. Trivia stood stunned, slack-jawed at what she was seeing. Panic soon set in and she ran over to her friend. "Neo, no, it wasn't time for play." "We can play later." Neo tilted her head in confusion. Trivia groaned before her heart raced as Papa yelled, "Trivia!" Trivia was paralyzed in terror. It happened every time. When Neo came to play, something bad followed. Why? Why did this always happen? "What are you doing?" Papa glowered as he purposely strolled toward Trivia. His scowl deepened as he noticed the trash bins knocked over. Their garbage spilled all over the cement. "This is unacceptable behavior. What do you have to say for yourself, young lady?" Trivia cowered under Papa's gaze. Her eyes darted and she shrank further, her fear confirmed. Neo was nowhere to be seen. Of course, when she needed her most, to prove she was real, she always disappeared. Trivia further wilted. What could she do? Papa wouldn't believe her, even if she did tell him the truth, that it wasn't her, it was Neo. But he wouldn't listen. Papa never did. It was better to accept her judgment and receive her punishment. It was easier that way. "Trivia," Papa slowed his approach to her, his voice softening, but his figure towering over her. His gaze looked down and pierced her. "I just want to understand. I know you're upset. I am too. I only want to know what is wrong, what you are thinking. Tell me something. Speak. Please." "Jim," Mama's calm voice reached her ears as she stood beside her husband, placing a hand on his shoulder. But Trivia did not hear her mama. All she heard was one word. "Speak." Trivia trembled. Tears shimmered in her eyes. She gathered as much air as she could take in and screamed. Her throat sizzled from the effort exerted. She prayed for a sound. Any sound besides the hot air violently escaping her lungs, and all that amounted to a whisper in the wind, heard by no one. She just couldn't. No matter how hard she tried, Trivia couldn't muster a sound despite her best effort. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Trivia screamed again, not caring if anyone heard her this time as she stormed past her parents, slamming the door behind her, venting her frustrations to the world the only way she could. All she wanted was to be heard. Was that too much to ask for? Why? Why was it always like this? Ugh, she only wanted to do something more. Anything other than just lying in this immaculate yet stuffy room. To have fun. Why couldn't she have fun? She was livid and stuck here in her room, with nothing but a book to read. Trivia loved to read, but now not even the most wonderful of adventures or fairy tales could bring her joy. She had read everything in this room. If she could speak, she could recite them, line by line for memory. Why did it always come to this? Why was she always locked in her room to be punished, kept away from everyone? She couldn't even go outside unless she was with her mother or father. Was it a wonder she acted up? What if she caused all that mischief, knocked over those bins? What would honestly change? Maybe she would feel a little better letting out her pent-up frustration. What of it? It was fun. That was all she wanted. She longed for the days to escape this confinement, this prison, to leave her mother and jailer, and her warden of a father. Oh, joyous day that would be. Still, Trivia clung on to the hope that perhaps she was one of those fair maidens locked away in the tower, just like the fairy tales, awaiting her valiant knight and his mighty steed to rescue her from this torment. Perhaps kiss him on the cheek for his reward. Maybe even more. Oh, how scandalous. Friend, why were you here? Trivia was confused. Why had Neo returned so soon? She usually disappeared for long periods after incidents like what happened with the bins, feeling shame for what she did. Instead, she smirked, standing by the window pointing outside. No! Trivia glowered, glaring at her friend. I was just locked away in her because of you. I don't want to play. Father is still upset with us. Neo scowled, shaking her head. She pointed outside again. Why was she so persistent? Yes, she wanted to leave, escape this place. But she knew better. She knew how much trouble she would get in. And why was she pointing at Trivia now? Did she blame her? Me? I did no such thing. You knocked over the bins. Trivia seethed, clenching her fists, seeing Neo shake her head. Enough of your nonsense. I do not want to play with you. Go away. Neo shook her head. Her grin broadened as she hoped toward the window, beckoning her to follow, using a chair to stand and unlock it. Her friend was taunting her. Trivia snarled. Her throat burned as tears trailed her cheeks. She wanted to say something deplorable, but nothing would come out. Trivia searched for the closest object to her in a rage. The book she was reading. Perfect. Trivia snapped, tossing the book with all her strength. She no longer wanted to get in trouble. Maybe if she did, Papa would stop being so upset with her. Her toss was true. It found and collided with Neo. But the strangest thing happened. She shattered into shards of pink glass. Shards that refused to descend as the real glass of the window showered where her friend had been moments before, and then dissipated as if they had never been real. Terror consumed Trivia watching the glass fall. There was no way her parents would believe this. Papa didn't believe anything she said, but is there anything more he could do to you? A dark thought crossed her mind. He's already locked you up? What more can he do? Send you away? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Trivia shivered at those words. Where did they come from? Why did she hear? She froze. Thunderous footsteps approached. Papa was coming. Trivia Vanilla! Papa exclaimed as her door slammed open. He seethed at Trivia standing before her bed, cowering from him while gazing in horror at the broken window. However, anger was not his first emotion. It was present. However, there seemed to be an odd sense of understanding as he scoffed. Lashing out in frustration. Finally, something I can understand. Trivia flinched. Papa never understood her. This felt like it was the first time he was listening. Well, let's hear it. What do you have to say for yourself? Papa scowled, staring right through Trivia. Trivia recoiled. She knew what he was searching for. He didn't want the answer she was going to give him, or how she could provide it. All he wanted was for her to be normal, to speak to him. We can't keep doing this. Papa clicked his tongue, but his expression softened while he shook his head. I can understand frustration, believe me, but you can't keep doing this. You are 12, Trivia. It's time to grow up and stop acting out like this. I can't be held responsible for what comes next all the time. There will come a time when you will have to take responsibility for your actions. Trivia bit her lip and withered under Papa's words. This was the calmest she had ever seen him when he was upset with her. This felt awful. Why was this worse? But as your father, that role still falls onto me. Perhaps it is time I am more stringent. Papa exhaled, shaking his head, turning from his daughter as Mama entered the room. For now, I don't have the time to deal with this. I have a party to organize. Do try and not cause a ruckus tonight, or there will be consequences. With those looming words, Papa left her in the room, brushing past Mama. She looked concerned, but there was also a hint of annoyance. Trivia, dear, Mama sighed, tenderly glancing at her withdrawn daughter. Her head slightly sunk as she walked over and sat on Trivia's bed, minimizing her height over her petite child. I understand how you feel. I was once like you, my daughter. Young and rebellious. Not nearly as special as you are, but a handful. Trivia tilted her head, curious. Mama was like her? Oh, I was a hellraiser when I was around your age. You remind me so much of myself. Mama laughed before she sadly smiled. But in time, it only harmed me more than it did any good. I came to realize I was hurting myself, and I simply stopped acting up. Stopped blaming others for what I had done. Trivia frowned. Was she trying to imply? No. Trivia retrieved her scroll from her wardrobe, typing on it and showing Mama what she had to say. Neo made angry, and then she shattered into glass. Glass? Mama's voice quivered. Trivia raised her brow. Why did her mother look so concerned at that specific portion and so angry? Why was Mama angry about that? Fine. Mama held a hiss in her throat, standing up and turning her back on Trivia, only stopping at the doorway to gaze back at her daughter. When you are ready to accept responsibility for your actions, we can talk more about this. Do bundle up, dear. I heard a winter storm is coming. This place felt familiar, yet different. This was a hospital room, but why did this feel so foreign? Everything in the room was something he recognized. He was accustomed to medical devices, but these, while he could identify them, were just a bit off. Something was wrong with them. Were they more advanced? It was unnerving. Naruto didn't like it. Not that he ever enjoyed it when he was in the hospital or visiting. Things seemed to happen when he was in them. What was worse was that his friends weren't here. He had hoped that the experience with those peculiar wolves was a fever dream, that he would have awoken to see Sakura, his team, Kakashi, Tsunade, someone familiar, and give them the unfortunate news about Sasuke. However, that didn't seem to be the case. After scanning the room, Naruto looked at himself. He was covered in bandages. His torso was tightly wrapped, especially around his collarbone, and his leg was heavily wrapped as well. He still felt all the claw marks that cut into his flesh. They were still painful, but not nearly as much as how exhausted he still felt. He supposed the dumb Nine Tails couldn't completely restore him after several fights back-to-back, or didn't want to. This was a nightmare. He had wished to believe that was a dream, but now he was somewhere new, unfamiliar. Crap, how did he get back home? Guess he had to figure out where he was. That would probably be a good place to start. Now where could he be? It was strange. It was rather warm at the Valley of the End. Here it was freezing cold. There was snow. Thankfully, it wasn't as cold as the land of snow. But that was a small comfort at the moment. More troubling, what were those creatures? He had never heard or seen anything about them. That wouldn't be the first time, unfortunately. He hated how often Sakura scolded him for not being aware of things outside of Konoha. Or even in, maybe he should give reading more books a try. But they were so boring. Naruto shook his head. No time to be thinking like that. He had to figure out where he was. This wasn't the land of snow due to those creatures. He didn't think the land of clouds had those creatures, but he knew nothing about that place besides they weren't on the best of terms and what they had done to Neji's dad. He hoped he wasn't there. He knew there was a history of bad blood between their countries that had led to several wars, one being relatively recent. Being a Konoha shinobi in the land of cloud would not end well. Ow, stupid things! Naruto coughed several times, glaring at the wires he was attached to. How he hated how they showed him everything he didn't want to see. Seeing his heart rate accelerate and other metrics rising from his panic. He didn't need to be reminded that he was in pain. Stupid wolves. Gonna shove my sandals up their rear the next time I see them. And that bastard too. Naruto glowered, scanning every detail, absorbing everything he could before frowning. Sasuke, where the heck did you leave me? This doesn't feel right at all. His head snapped over at the sound of a click. The door was opening? Was someone coming to visit him? Someone he knew he hoped. It would make his day. Calm this nervous churning in his stomach. Naruto's curiosity turned into disappointment as a middle-aged man wearing blue scrubs entered the room. Naruto sighed, glaring at all of his monitors, likely coming in to check on him since they were being noisy. Yo, can you tell me where I am? Naruto asked, waving at the man, giving his best confident smile. Wanted to show he was okay. He hadn't expected the man to leap back, caught off guard by Naruto being awake. Whoa, take it easy. I heal really fast. Naruto tried to placate the surprised man. Many people were astonished by his healing factor. But that wasn't the reason. The man was alarmingly speaking in a language he had never heard before. Calling for someone. Naruto's eyes sharpened. He felt a shivering chill travel down his spine. Something didn't feel right. He was pretty confident that, while there were other languages, they weren't common. Everyone he met spoke the same language, even when leaving the village. What was going on? And who was he calling? Soldiers? Naruto knew rationally that he was probably calling the doctor. That was always the first response. But instinctively, he couldn't take a chance with everything feeling so wrong. He had to get out of here now. The halls of this place smelled heavily of cleaning chemicals. This place was too sanitized for his liking. It didn't help that this was the third time he had to come here in the last 2 months. Yang had broken her arm a few months back, being a little too adventurous. Summer took Ruby here when she had a bad cold. Now, Tai's gaze darkened at the thought of his late wife. His thoughts drifted to the love of his life, but he was snapped out of it by a pull on his wrist. His eyes shifted to the spitting image of Summer. Their baby daughter, Ruby, awkwardly attempted to keep pace with his walk. He thinly smiled to comfort her. She looked so nervous. She didn't like coming here either. Yang didn't either. It was why she was walking beside Crow. Probably didn't feel safe with him. He couldn't blame her, but they weren't here for them this time. They were here for someone else, the young boy who had saved them while he was lost. "I hate it here," Yang grumbled, deeply scowling at the nurses they walked by. "Can we go now?" "We aren't here for you, kiddo. We're checking on the kid." Crow reminded Yang why they were here while shaking his head. "Okay." Yang flinched before she hung her head, biting her lip. Tai had to refrain from laughing. She wanted to check on him, but didn't like it at the hospital. Couldn't blame her, as they made her keep that cast on for a few weeks. She hated that thing. "Is he?" Yang finally spoke again after a brief silence, her worry evident. "He'll be fine. He was recovering when he was at the house. The kid is tough," Crow stated, ruffling Yang's hair much to her chagrin. "Quit it!" Yang swiped at Crow, huffing and stomping ahead. "There, no chance of tears when she's angry." Crow laughed, watching Yang storm ahead. "That's one way of handling that, I guess." Tai grimaced while lightly nodding his head. That wasn't how he would have handled it. Or Summer. "You doing okay?" Crow snapped Tai out of his funk before he could sink back in. Tai grimaced, afraid to speak the truth. But feeling Ruby's gentle tug, he glanced down to see her hold up her hands to him. "Tired?" Ruby demanded, too tired to continue. Okay, Tai smiled, bending over and lifting Ruby's tiny form and planting her on his hip. "Yay!" Ruby laughed, her silver eyes sparkling brilliantly. Tai laughed once more, shaking his head at her silly antics. If there was one thing that could always pull him out of the dumps, "I'm getting there. One step at a time, right?" Tai turned and faced Crow, forcing a smile. "Don't force it." Crow scowled before patting his brother on the shoulder. "I'll be here if you need me." "I know," Tai whispered, grateful that Crow was here. At least one person was left. 702. Ruby broke his train of thought, trying her best to read the room numbers. That it?" "No, a few more down. 710 is the room we are looking for." Tai shook his head, biting his lip to contain his laughter. "Okay," Ruby smiled and looked ahead. 703. What that? Following his daughter's gaze, Tai looked further ahead. A frown followed a rush of nurses, doctors, and security staff gathered several doors ahead. Right about where? "I don't like where this is heading." Tai scrunched his brow before wincing as several people flew out of the room, and a blonde teenager wearing hospital garb rushed out of the room a moment later, yelling something entirely incomprehensible as he did. "Did you catch any of that?" Tai blinked, glancing toward a befuddled Crow. "That is certainly a dialect." Crow tilted his head, watching as the kid sprinted away, easily avoiding all the staff. Head straight in their direction, a panicked expression adorned on his features. Tai and Crow shared a glance and a knowing nod. "Kid, calm down," Crow quickly responded, attempting to wrangle the teen, responding far quicker than he could react. Or so he thought. "Why am I holding a log?" Crow stared at the log, momentarily stumped, before tossing it to the side and moving to catch him again, only for a brief cloud of smoke to obscure his vision. And a dozen versions of him sprang to life, running in every possible direction. Some were even running on the walls and ceiling. "Okay, kid has some unique abilities." Crow stopped, floored once more before his eyes sharpened, locking in and rushing after, chasing after. "Cool!" Yang pumped her fist and watched Naruto flee down the hallway. "You show him! Get him! Make him pay!" "Go, Uncle Crow!" Ruby cheered. "Ruby, Yang, not helping!" Tai refrained from palming his face before sighing. At least they were enjoying themselves. Still, something was off. Even as the kid yelled obscenities in another language and evaded Crow down the hallway and out of the hospital, it felt off. Tai sighed. Why did he get the feeling this day would only become more complicated? And why did he feel the kid would end up at their house somehow?